What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is the Landship Scorpius, and I'm Lieutenant Nathaniel Flynn of the Landship Scorpius. And today, we're here with another Rivet Wars video. This video is going to be a little different. As some of you know, at the time of the recording of this video, Rivet Wars has not released the Tesla stats for their Tesla character. This is a little bit awkward, as I think it was an oversight when they released the rest of the base unit heroes. I believe that it was an oversight, or at least I hope it was, and they forgot to release those stats along with the other stats. This has left us with being down an entire hero unit and possibly an integral part of the Ruska base unit strategy when we're testing out these new models, now that we have the stats to go with the new models we have. And it's just been really kind of awkward. However, I have had a request to cover the unit and the subsequent model. So today what we're doing is a speculation video to kind of tie in with my Tesla bot video that I did. I'm hoping to release these in quick procession of each other, so that way you can have them. I'm going to be offering up alternative stats that I believe, or I think, the unit is going to have based on other things. I'll talk about each one. And I'm hoping these will help play with the other units that we have on the Ruska base set. So without further ado, let me quickly go ahead and get right into the video and talk about what I think these stats will end up being. Before we do, please forgive me. The little Tesla guy does not stand on his own, and I haven't had custom-made stands made for them yet. I'm trying to get them as close to the Rivet Wars bases as I can. So he's probably going to be lying down when we're talking about these units. I'm also going to be discussing some of my interpretations of the Tesla bot rules so that we can have that discussion going. If you want to discuss your thoughts on the Tesla stats I'm discussing or on the Tesla bot interpretations I'm discussing, do feel free to head over to the subreddit or the Board Game Geeks forums or the Cool Me or Not forums. And we'll keep this discussion going, or on Twitter using hashtag Rivet Wars, and we'll try to keep that discussion going. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I'm going to start by talking about the model. The model is beautiful. Extremely detailed. He's got a little monocle and mustache. He's wielding the two things we've seen in his picture that was released, which are like electronics. He's got a nice little like Russian hat. That's really weird, but when you see in the picture that it's like electrically charged, that's pretty cool. And he's got an amazing Tesla-fied backpack. So it's a very beautiful unit, a very nice one. Shapeways did a great job of printing out the detail of this unit, which, as we know, is a huge appeal for Rivet Wars in general. So it is a beautiful unit. Out of the other units, it's the only one that doesn't stand by itself, so I need to get a stand for him to stand up when we're playing. So without further ado, let me start off with my first, and I guess we can call it my main interpretation. There's a few ideas I go with down the road, but let's start off with our first my interpretation of this unit's stats, and let's get let me explain a little bit why. So first, I want to suggest his deployment cost, and this is going to basically be the same throughout. I see his deployment as being 3 deployment points and 1 rivet. My reasoning for this is similar people, heroes that we see have this deployment cost, especially in the base set with Baron Gaston Tankin and the sniper, Jaeger Erwin Koenig. We see them having this base cost of 3 deployment points and 1 rivet as a starting hero. Another thing that won't change too much is that he will be a hero infantry unit. Now, all my renditions I show do have him being a hero infantry unit. I think this will be good for having him being able to enter strategic objectives and bunkers and be a little bit more protected against everything. I really feel like the other units, the other Blight hero units, are all infantry types. I think this will be good. I would also not be surprised to figure out that he is a support unit, as at the moment the Ruska units have no official support unit. But I kind of feel like this is okay, especially for the base set. It'll set them apart a little bit, and I kind of feel like it makes more sense for him to be able to hide out in bunkers, as well as be able to take and hold strategic objectives. As you know, even other units support, even if they can physically fit, only infantry units can enter these structures. And I do feel like this is important to keep this hero unit alive. Another thing that's the same throughout is he'll probably only be worth 1 bounty. This 1 bounty is pretty standard for base hero units, especially single ones, so I'm not surprised in saying he'll probably be worth 1 bounty. And with that, let's get into this one's other stuff. Another thing you'll notice throughout is he only has 1 movement. The reason why I gave him 1 movement is, again, going off of other infantry base hero types that we see, especially on the Blight side, where they have a lot of these infantry heroes that are similar. We see that they only have a movement of 1, and I'll compensate that in other areas, but I think that it's a really good move for him. I also gave him an armor type of 1, and you'll see in my other sections that I do give him an armor type of 1 throughout. I do have a feeling on this that I feel he should possibly have an armor type of 2. I feel like at the moment the Schlitten and the Riflemen are going to tear through the Ruska faction. You're going to be relying heavily on the heroes, on the tank, and on the Lancers who have those higher armor types to counter the Ruska and the Schlitten units that are going to tear through the rest of your army. But you can't stop deploying the rest of your army because it's so reliant on them and their large numbers. I feel like having him as an armor type of 2 is going to be really important to just have 1 more unit who can counter those type of units. The other issue I have with him being armor type 1 is just that he's got so much electricity, and also, as you'll notice, I try to keep him, he's got electricity and stuff on his stats and on his stat card, so I feel like he is going to end up having arc lightning or a version of it. So he's going to be kind of like his Tesla bots, and I want to make him a little bit beefier than his Tesla bots to have that armor type 2. The problem, and the reason why he has armor type 1 in all my suggestions, is this probably isn't the case. Looking at other hero infantry units like Tesla and what to expect from him, I don't think that kind of balancing thought went into it, or maybe that's just not how the whole army will work as a whole. I think it's way more likely he'll be armor type 1. I think this will make him extremely vulnerable to all the same vulnerabilities the rest of the Ruska has, but making him armor type 2 means that both of the Ruska units are armor type, both of the Ruska heroes would be armor type 2, and extremely vulnerable against Panzerfaust and other anti-armor type 2 units. And they are just way too easy to be taken out when going up against those type of players. So I think more realistically, following what the other units are, I think it will end up being armor type 1. And lastly, I gave him 2 health, and again, this is just based on realistically looking at other units that are similar. Most of them will be end up having that 2 health. I think it's important to give him more than 1 health, amazingly, because he is a hero unit, and I definitely believe he should have a little bit extra. I think in an ideal world, he might even have 3 health to help him stay alive a little bit more. But if Corporal Ursus only has 2 health, there's no way that Tesla has more than 2 health. So I think that that's another realistic expectation, is that he'll only have 2 health. And without further ado, let's talk about what makes my version 1 stats special. So in version 1, I give him a range of 2, and I'm going to wait till his special to discuss Arc Lightning and how I believe that works. But I gave him a range of 2. This is to make him a little bit more useful than the Tesla bots. If you just give him Arc Lightning, I think that that's dangerous. I think that that will hinder this hero unit a little bit too much. But I do believe giving him a range of 2 will help out a lot and get him to attack a little bit more. I didn't give him an air range. If you saw my video about Tesla bots, I kind of believe they should have an air range of 1 just to make them a little bit more useful with all their negatives. I kind of believe that the same should be said with Tesla. I think you should have an air range of 1. But if the Tesla bots and Tesla both have an air range of 1, I feel like that's a ton of units on the Ruska base set who have air ranges, and I think that actually tilts the scales a little bit. Definitely when playing against units with Battle of Brighton, I think they would definitely need that if they don't get planes and you're playing with someone with Battle of Brighton. I think your house rules should give most of their units an air range so that they're not sitting ducks. But I think realistically he's going to have a 0 air range just like most of the other units. I gave him 1 attack. I made it a flat grid, just like the Tesla bots, only I made him a little stronger. I gave him 2 dice against Armor Type 1 and 2 dice against Armor Type 2. I think this is really good and important to set him apart from the Tesla bots. This makes him a little stronger to attack with them, and I really like that idea. I also gave him 1 dice against Armor Type 3. I think that's important to keep. And 1 dice against Armor Type 4. He is a hero unit, so I do believe he should still have that to match the Tesla bots. I also gave him 1 dice against Armor Type 5. A lot of hero units have the kind of across-the-board attack stuff that they can do, and I really believe that he should be able to do the same. So he should have the 1 extra dice against those. I did this to give them another unit, give the Ruskas another unit that is good against taking out Armor Type 1 and hopefully Armor Type 2 as well. This is going to help this unit take out the people who are going to hurt the other Ruska units. This will mean that he's a little bit better at taking out Riflemen as well as Schlitten with that Armor Type 1 and 2. Make him a little bit more useful in clearing out bunkers and strategic objectives. And now let's jump into his special, because this is where a lot of the discussion is going to come from and a lot of people are going to disagree with me with what I think. So let's talk about Arc Lightning. So I gave him Arc Lightning. Actually, all my things do give him Arc Lightning, whether or not he needs it. And there's a reason. So let's talk about Arc Lightning for a second. In my Tesla bot video, I talked about the wording for Arc Lightning is that this unit can only attack grids adjacent to more than 1 Tesla bot grid. This means that the unit can only attack grids that are flanked by 2 Tesla bots. I did mention that this does not include wording that says that it needs to be the user's grid plus another grid. It only says they need to be attacked by 2 adjacent. So let's talk about this for a second. I'm sure I got some comments on it in my Tesla bot video, but let's talk about this for a second. So this means, in theory, if you have, say, 4 Tesla bots on the map somewhere else, as long as there's a grid, so this one, flanked by 2 Tesla bot grids, then those other Tesla bots far away, 10 spaces away, in theory could also attack that grid, since it's flanked by 2 Tesla bot grids that are adjacent. This is a little overpowered, but I talked about that in the Tesla bot video. I think this would really help that interpretation of rules. This character. I think this would give him a much longer range than 2, but that also leads to another thing that I kind of want for this version of character of giving him a range of 2. I want this character to count as a Tesla bot. And his range of 2 would mean that that would count as a grid being adjacent to a Tesla bot. I think this is the kind of connection the Tesla bots need. And I think that would actually help a lot of their weaknesses. So what this would mean is if this Tesla unit was 2 grids away, this Tesla bot can now attack into this grid because he would count as a Tesla bot within 2 spaces of this unit. So now this Tesla bot now gets an attack as well as this Tesla attacking the grid as well. I think this would also work for if they're actually adjacent, you get a farther range, and giving these Tesla bots the ability to attack more people because his range is a little higher and he counts as a Tesla bot. I think this would be a fantastic use of this interpretation, and it would also help these poor Tesla bots that have issues getting up, or if you have units that are really good at taking them out, it kind of gives them an extra means to attack these other units. So that can all be discussed. That's a very big and probably going to be an unpopular view of Arc Lightning. And definitely this version of Tesla, giving him a greater range and making him count as a Tesla bot. So he will, he'll be able to affect more Tesla bots on the field and who they can attack because he'll have greater range and count as being adjacent to them. Now, my thoughts on this is that this definitely isn't going to be the case. And my reasoning behind that is because this is a huge stretch to Arc Lightning as a special. It also includes in the wording of Arc Lightning that that unit can only attack grids adjacent to more than 1 Tesla bot grid. So what this means is that this unit's range of 2 means that he can attack independently, but he also has Arc Lightning, which would be extremely confusing for someone looking at the rules. Because this would mean that he gets a range of 2, but can still only attack units that are adjacent to 1 or more. It also uses the words adjacent to 1 or more Tesla bot grids. So this means that even if he has that range of 2, and he can attack, greater, there's 2 away is not adjacent, it's 2 away. So even in the wording of the special, it would only be, 2 away. The last sad part is it specifically names out adjacent to 1 or more Tesla bot grid. And this means that his own grid wouldn't count as a Tesla bot grid unless there was a Tesla bot in it. This is extremely sad and puts a huge hole in my whole idea for this, Tesla unit. And again, it's all just speculation, but there's too many jumps to be made for this version of the unit. Another thing I want to talk about this version of the unit, though, that I think also makes them helpful moving on from Arc Lightning, is a special called Inventor, which means he becomes a deployment grid for Tesla bots. I think that some version of this Tesla unit has to have this. It has to. And the reason is because he's Tesla. He has to be able to spawn them. Tesla bots do come with a deployment point of 1 requirement, so I don't believe he's going to have Handler and then he spawns Tesla bots as an action. I honestly believe that Tesla bots are meant to be spawned, but I think that Tesla bots need any help they can get. And especially if he's going to have Arc Lightning or some other version of that kind of attack, he must have some ability to spawn Tesla bots directly on him. I think turning whatever grid he's in into a Tesla bot deployment grid is a fantastic use of this character. It makes them a little bit more useful, and being able to spawn multiple Tesla bots in that grid or fill up the rest of the grid with Tesla bots would greatly help this unit. And I think realistically, we're going to be able to expect something similar. Some special ability or some whatever that allows him to spawn Tesla bots or have a better relationship with Tesla bots. It only makes sense, and it really would help this unit out. So without further ado, let's move on from version 1 and let's move on to version 2 and talk about some other ideas for the Tesla character. So moving on to version 2, let's make some changes. I didn't give him the range. He's just like a Tesla bot. He counts as a Tesla bot. We are assuming this. So in his specials, he has arc lightning. Nothing else has really changed. He still has the same attacks. He still counts as everything else. The difference is I gave him field repair. So making this unit kind of a bad unit, making him a slightly beefier Tesla bot, I feel like he needs something else. I think him as an inventor and being a fantastically smart inventor, I gave him field repair, which means he can now heal 1 damage off of a unit 1 grid away. So this would be great to keeping up some of the other units, some of the other heroes self-healing himself, keeping up the tank and the Lancer units. I think this would make him a must-have on the field, and thus giving him and his kind of underpowered Tesla bots more of a reason to be on the field. It would also beef up the Ruska faction as a whole a little better, that I completely agree with. This would be highly controversial of an idea, I believe, giving a base unit the basically healing move, especially a move that we only see in a neutral unit. So a savvy Ruska player would want to buy that neutral unit as soon as possible and basically have a monopoly on healing units in the game. But I really feel like this would help basically a beefy Tesla bot, especially as an inventor character. And I think it would make him be an important tool to beef up the Ruska base faction alone. So I really like this idea as a special for the unit. And lastly, let's continue the discussion by talking about my version 3. Version 3 is kind of like version 2. I basically made him a beefier Tesla bot, but I've changed some of the stats around to talk about, to make it a little bit interesting. So the first thing that you'll notice is I changed his attack type. I changed it to a chain attack. The reason is because in some of my other custom action cards and things I have electric-based attacks, and I did it as a chain attack in the theory of you electrocute 1, it chains throughout the squad or the grid. So a successful hit could, in theory, ricochet that electricity throughout the grid. In the nature of this theory of the chain attack is kind of like an electric strike, I've changed what kind of damage he does to kind of increase the odds of hitting. So my thought is the more metal and the more conductive material you have, the more likely it is that the electric strike will go through you. So instead of 2 dice, I put 1 dice as armor type 1 for infantry and more cloth-based armored. Which I kind of get. It makes him a little bit weaker, but I still kept the 2 dice against armor type 2, and this time he gets 2 dice against armor type 3, 2 dice against armor type 4, and that's still 1 dice against armor type 5. The idea of this is that there's a higher chance to ricochet through a grid if you have things with more metal. So more rocket cycles, a giant armored mech dude, units that are more armored or heavily armed, those kind of things. Armor type 3 is more tanks, more metal shielding, so more conductive material. The only way that the chain attack would really work on those higher units, like Armor Type 3, is against people like Atomic Robo, who are bigger, beefier, Armor Type 3 units that would be able to conduct throughout the grid. I also gave him something else. I gave him Runner 1, so that will give him more movement to allow him to get a little bit closer to other units when he starts on things that act as duck boards. This is the kind of playoff that he doesn't have much of a range, and he would need to attack based on other Tesla bot ranges. So I gave him, you know, a little help in the movement front. And with that thought, I also gave him Rapid Assault 1. This is the idea of, again, he counts as a Tesla bot, so getting him the chance to get closer to units to make that adjacent a little bit more helpful, so he can instantly get off an attack after he has, you know, closed that distance. And since we talked about this in the Kozak, a lot of people have voted and chosen that Runner and does affect Rapid Assault. So until we get, you know, a more official reading on that from the higher-ups, the community seems to say yes, and I've kind of agreed in my Kozak video that it kind of helps this faction out a little bit. So in this way, if he starts on duck boards, he could, in theory, get Rapid Assault 2, which again would extremely help that closing of the gap to be able to attack or to get those two grids that are adjacent to Tesla bot grids. I think that would help immensely. So again, that's kind of, instead of helping him in the attack front, it's helping him in the more movement front and making him a little bit more of a versatile unit so that he's able to do a little bit more. I think that this would also extremely help making him a deployment grid for Tesla bots. I think that idea of a special is a must-have. He must have the ability to spawn Tesla bots either in his same grid or one grid away or something to make any kind of use of this unit and to really help the Tesla bots out. Because the Tesla bots just need something to make them worth it, and even with a 1 deployment point cost, they're kind of not worth the investment. And besides what I talked about earlier with making him an Armor Type 2 instead of an Armor Type 1, or making him a support unit instead of an infantry unit, that's basically all my thoughts on the unit. I have 3 versions of stats that kind of have weaknesses and benefits. They all kind of affect the Ruska faction as a whole. I do think my main idea for this unit would be my version 1, with giving him a higher range and allowing him to attack independently on his own, but also still letting him be a part of the Tesla bots and count as a Tesla bot, as well as counting his range as being adjacent. This will help the Tesla bots get stronger, encourage more use of the Tesla bots, as well as making sure that when the Tesla bots get destroyed, he doesn't become useless himself. He still has some powerful attacks. He's also a deployment grid for Tesla bots. I think this makes the most sense for a hero unit called Tesla when there's another unit called a Tesla bot. This makes the most sense. The only addition I would add to it is maybe a higher armor type, or even making him a support unit so he himself cannot enter strategic objectives or bunkers. However, making him a deployment point means you can spawn 3 Tesla bots in the grid, same as him, when he's next to these things, and then he can attack and clear out the strategic objective. You move those Tesla bots in and capture the objective, and then they can move on their own. And then he is just a support unit, basically spawning Tesla bots as they come. With this discussion, I'm also going to say that I only bought 2 Tesla bots, because again, I wasn't sure how they would end up being used. Now that we kind of have an idea, and I have these kind of fake Tesla stats. I do think that you should have a minimum of 3 of them, if nothing else, on their own, but to give you a little bit more diversification with what counts as being a grid adjacent to a Tesla bot, and giving you a little bit more. That being said, without Tesla or without my suggested additions to a Tesla unit, the Tesla bots are extremely kind of weak at the moment. They're too easy to take out with both of the other factions that we have, with the Allied and the Blight. And I feel like they're just not worth that 1 deployment point cost when you need those deployment points to beef out the ranks of your Cossacks, which are at the moment by far a better investment, especially when the Cossacks rely so much in having more units with them. That being said, they wouldn't be a terrible investment with Tesla bots and my suggested Tesla stats counting as an infantry type. As I've said before, quite unpopularly, I interpret Legion as being the same class of unit in the same grid. So I, as a house rule at the moment, until this can be fixed down the road or elaborated upon by the powers that be, I include their Legion being activated by other infantry types or other cavalry types. So Tesla and the Tesla bots counting as infantry could still fill out the ranks of Ruska units, allowing them to use their grenades and rapid assaults. A lot of people have said no, it didn't say the same class, it said the same type. So you need to have more Cossacks. To have the Cossack Legion, you need to have other Hussars, to have the Hussar legions activated. I don't know, I just feel like that's capping these units a little too hard. But again, whatever the end rules are, we don't know what the game as a whole, or what this faction as a whole will act like. We just have these base units, and we're missing the Tesla stats. And with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. It's a bit long. It's a bunch of speculation, a bunch of talking. In the end, there are no Tesla stats, so all of this is just my blatant guessing and speculation. If you have your own ideas for how Tesla should work, or how Tesla should act with the Tesla bots, please let me know. Continue the conversation in the comments below, or on the subreddit, or on the official forums. With that, that's going to end up this video. This video is going to go alongside the Tesla bot video, so do feel free to check out the Tesla bot video. I will put a link down below to kind of help people out with that. Do check out my other Rivet War videos, including my other videos on the Ruska units. I've already done some other videos, and again, we have those stats, so I do talk about the pros and cons of those other units. If you would like to see a Rivet Wars Ruska unit, if I haven't completed that already, do feel free to let me know who you would like to see. If Rivet Wars isn't your thing, don't worry, I have other steampunk content on my channel, including events and World Hatchery 101. Do feel free to check out our Facebook page on facebook.com/landship, as well as like Rivet Wars and Super Robot Punch on their Facebooks and their Twitters. Check out the Rivet Wars Instagram page, and check out the official channels for Rivet Wars content. The Cool Mini or Not forums, the Board Game Geek forums, and the Rivet Wars subreddit. And with that, that's all the time we have for today on this speculation. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.